He slept on cold pavement while the world rushed past him, unseen, unheard, judged before he ever spoke. To most people, he was just another beggar, poor, powerless, disposable. They saw his skin, his clothes, his place in society, and decided his worth in seconds. But one moment, one encounter in a crowded public space, would quietly challenge everything he believed about himself, and everything society believed about people like him. This isn't just a story about poverty. It's about how prejudice shapes destinies, and how one mindset shift can defy it. But the question is, what happened that day to make him stop begging and start becoming something more? Every morning began the same way for him. He woke before sunrise on hard ground near the railway station, surrounded by noise but completely alone. Trains came and went. People hurried past with purpose in their steps, eyes fixed ahead, careful not to look at him for too long. To them, he wasn't a man with a story. He was a problem to be avoided. His torn clothes, his tired face, and the color of his skin made assumptions easy. In a world obsessed with status, he existed at the very bottom. Begging wasn't a choice he was proud of. It was a survival routine shaped by years of rejection. Some days he was ignored entirely. Other days, he received coins tossed without eye contact, as if kindness needed distance. He learned quickly that society had already decided who he was and what he deserved. No one asked his name. No one cared how he ended up there. He had absorbed a message repeated silently every day, that people like him were meant to stay where they were. Still, the station was his entire world. It was where hope and heartbreak crossed paths every hour. He watched businessmen in clean suits, families laughing together, travelers chasing dreams far bigger than his own. Deep inside, there was a quiet longing he never allowed himself to name, because hope felt dangerous for someone constantly reminded of his place. Racism didn't always shout at him. Sometimes it whispered through indifference, through suspicion, through the way security guards watched him more closely than others. It taught him to think small, to expect little, to believe that asking was all he could ever do. Then one ordinary day, among the rushing crowd and screeching trains, a single encounter disrupted that routine. It wasn't loud, it wasn't violent, but it carried a truth that would force him to confront the way the world saw him, and more importantly, the way he saw himself. And what followed would slowly expose a hidden injustice, while setting the stage for a transformation no one at that station expected. The encounter didn't end when the train disappeared down the tracks. It followed him, lingering in his thoughts like a shadow that refused to fade. For the first time in years, he stopped holding out his hand. He sat still as people passed, feeling exposed without the familiar routine. Some stared longer than usual, suspicious, as if his silence itself was a threat. Others whispered, assuming the worst. In their eyes, a man like him was only allowed to exist in one way. The words replayed again and again, cutting deeper each time. He had been judged his entire life, not just for his poverty, but for his skin, his accent, his place in society. People assumed laziness, dishonesty, worthlessness. Even when he begged, he was treated as if he were taking something he didn't deserve. Security guards watched him closely. Passers-by clutched their bags tighter. Kindness, when it came, was often wrapped in pity, never respect. As the hours turned into days, the silence became heavier. Hunger gnawed at him, but something stronger held him back. For once, he wasn't numb. He was thinking. He began to notice how differently people reacted to others who asked for help. A street performer received applause. A vendor received payment, but a beggar who looked like him was seen as a burden. The injustice wasn't just economic. It was deeply human. Late one afternoon, his eyes wandered to the edge of the tracks where wildflowers grew unnoticed, thriving in a place no one cared to tend. Bright colors against rusted metal. Beauty surviving neglect. Something shifted inside him. Those flowers didn't beg to be seen. They simply existed, offering something without asking. And suddenly, the idea felt dangerous and hopeful at the same time. The next morning, he tried something different. When someone handed him a coin, he gave something back. The change was immediate and unsettling. Faces softened. Hands lingered. Smiles appeared where there had once been discomfort. People who would never have looked at him twice now acknowledged him as human. not because he had changed his skin or his past, but because he had changed the exchange. Yet the contrast was painful. When he had nothing to offer, he was invisible. When he offered something, he was accepted. The realization burned. Was dignity really conditional? Was respect only earned when someone like him proved usefulness? The flowers became more than a gesture. They became proof of a cruel truth about how society values people. The moment came quietly, but it carried the weight of a lifetime. As the train slowed at the platform, he felt his chest tighten. Among the moving crowd, he recognized the same man whose words had shattered his old identity. This time, though, he didn't shrink. His hands didn't tremble. He stepped forward with purpose, holding the flowers like proof of something hard-earned. The air felt heavier as people watched, uncertain of what a man like him was allowed to become. In their eyes lingered the same old suspicion, waiting for him to overstep, to be reminded of his place. But instead of begging, he stood tall. He offered value, not apology. In that instant, the power dynamic shifted, and the silence around them spoke louder than any insult ever had. When the exchange happened, it was simple. Money passed from one hand to another. Flowers changed owners. But inside him, something cracked open. For the first time, he felt seen, not as a problem, not as a stereotype, but as a person worthy of fair exchange. The realization hit hard. The chains that held him down were not only forged by society's prejudice, but by the beliefs he had been forced to accept. The crowd began to move again, but he remained frozen in clarity. Years of quiet racism, of being watched, dismissed, and underestimated, rushed through his mind. He understood now how deeply injustice had shaped his thinking, teaching him to expect less from life. And in that moment, he made a decision that felt terrifying and irreversible. He would never return to the ground he once slept on. He would never again wait for permission to matter. As the train pulled away, carrying the past with it, he stood at the edge of a new future, one step away from everything he had known and everything he was about to become. But the real test wasn't surviving the moment. It was what he chose to do after the platform emptied. This is why his story matters. Because for every life that breaks free, there are countless others still judged before they speak, still limited by labels they never chose. Racism doesn't just steal opportunities. It steals imagination. The question isn't whether people can change. It's whether we are willing to change the way we see them and the way they're allowed to see themselves. If one shift in mindset can rewrite a life, imagine what could happen if society made that shift too.